Ladies and gentlemen, ears of corn all over the internet. Welcome to the Corn Chronicles. The search continues. This evening's guest is none other than my dear friend, Mr. Steve Soroka. Steve, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing good, brother, man. So good to see you. I appreciate you joining me, man.
Of course.
So, Steve and I go way back to probably around seventh, eighth grade. Steve, I'm going to hit you with a real kind of big picture first question. I'm just going to give you three initials as a prompt, and I'm going to ask for some thoughts on kind of that time in our lives. And those three initials are none other than C T S.
I knew it. I knew it.
Yeah, I bet, man. For my part, man, CTS represents a really cool time, certainly in my life, getting to know you fellas. I'll let you jump into some names and specifics. But it was a really cool time of just kind of riding around on bikes and doing kind of stupid but harmless things and just kind of, yeah, that's the best way to put it, I think. And just kind of really just kind of learning and growing up together, man.
Yeah, man.
Tell me about some of your thoughts and experiences with that.
All right. Well, I think one of the first things that comes to mind was when it was probably around the first time we started hanging out, because this is like a very early memory I have of you.
Okay.
And that's I remember you had like this gray Suffolk basketball shirt with like these blue basketball shorts, and when we used to ride bikes around, I just remember seeing your head just like bounce up and down with like the afro,
Yeah.
and then it just like in the shorts and shit, and it was just, I don't know, it was just something. I had like that picture, just like us going down like Parkside Avenue, and we're all just like riding.
Yeah, man. Tremendous times, man.
Yeah.
We were always kind of riding out, going to the pizza place, things like that. I spent a lot of time making noise in my yard. I know that. But hindsight makes that more enjoyable than it probably was for me at the time, and my parents, the poor people. But as much as CTS was just a group of friends, did we know what that meant? You would know better than me. Did that ever actually stand for anything?
I think originally we had it stand for Crazy Train Society, like the Aussie, that whole thing.
Of course,
And,
yeah.
yeah. And for some reason we thought it was like we were like copying too much,
Okay.
just like blatantly using it,
Yeah. This is ours now.
Right. So we had the initials, and then we just were like, okay, what sounds like cool and like actiony and like there's movement going on.
Yeah.
And kind of destructive too. So it's kind of like, whoa, you want to like look at it or hear it, I guess, in that context.
Right.
So we just came up with like Crash, Trash, and Smash, just because it was just like this mix of just chaotic, I don't know, it was just, we thought it was cool, and we were like 12, 13,
Yeah.
right?
Right around there, for sure. I know I was a little late to the party, but I was certainly there, man. I'm glad.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Glad I made it. So it's hard to really put in to words like what that group was, because it was really such a special time of adolescence. But to bring it back to you specifically, in addition to just being a group of friends, CTS was also a band. Steve's a super talented guitar player, and we'll get into that certainly in a little while for sure. What I've always kind of really appreciated about you, because you just said that we're dating all the way back to like when we're like 12, 13 years old. And you always kind of took it upon yourself to be what I would consider like the historian of the group. I think now it's easy to take for granted that we live in a world of Facebook and Instagram and social media. And if like somebody goes out to get lunch together, like they're going to take a photo of either each other or their food. You know what I'm saying? And just like
Mhm.
chronicle things in that way. And
Yeah.
I'm not making fun of that. I mean, gosh darn, I'm doing a series of talks with, some of the best friends of my life because I want to save things in that way. But I think now it's more kind of a social cue for people to treat their lives like that.
Mhm.
And I think you, in a time before social media, and also at an age where, quite frankly, I think there's a real inherent wisdom to want to save these memories and realize kind of the special moments that you're a part of. Um, you were kind of chronicling these events before it was popular and expected to chronicle these events. Has that always been has that always been kind of a goal of yours? Like, what are kind of your thoughts on that? Because for my part, I know I wasn't doing that when I was a kid, and I know that it's something that you always kind of took some pride in doing.
Yeah, so I always just like had like this understanding that like if I do something when I'm young, like it's like certain things, like that when you get a lot older, you'll be glad that you did those things when you were really young, and just like taking pictures of goofy stuff, us messing around and things like that. I just it was fun at the time to take the pictures, and then now it's like you look back on it and it's like wow, that's a really interesting thing to be able to still have these pictures
Yeah,
and just it's kind of just it's like a reminiscent it's like a window into the past, you know what I mean? It's like
indeed.
and I have these photo albums over there, which I was gonna maybe pull out some pictures, but I have like since then, as far as just like documenting, I mean, like I've always liked like taking pictures and stuff, and since we all have cameras on our phones and shit,
Yeah,
it's so easy to do. So
yeah.
I have like
It's a family program, bro.
so yeah, so like I have just like maybe like 15,000 like pictures and videos and stuff like saved up, like including the ones that like I've scanned, and then like other ones that I've had saved like from then, probably like early 2000s all the way up until now, and it just keeps growing as time goes on.
Man, how special is that, man? I want to say that I appreciate it. I mean, shoot. I have a couple of framed photos up there that are from back in those days that without you, man, those would be nothing but memories, man. And really cool to have those chronicled. So I think I speak for everybody in that group. Joe, Zach, man, Nick. Really, a lot of gratitude for kind of saving those things.
My
And I
pleasure.
say what I also love about it too is nowadays again with social media, a lot of that stuff is instant gratification.
Yeah.
You you'll just find something and then suddenly you'll send me something from like 2009 and just be like, yo, remember this? And like he sent me the other day just us shooting around in Vermont in this old I guess old in this like ski resort um, little basketball court. And it's just 2009, and we're not doing anything specific. If anything, Steve is calling me a bitch since you cursed first, trying to rattle me when I'm shooting, which he was unsuccessful with. So
I was.
you can tell why I told the story,
It was not effective.
Yeah, man. But we got some more basketball memories coming up in just a little while, man.
All
But
right.
nah, man. I always a text from you. You never know what you're gonna get. It could be a real trip down memory lane, to say the least. Man. You
Yeah,
really don't.
it's a pleasant surprise. I mean, I mean, from my point of view, I would think if
Yeah,
I
usually for me as well, man.
hopefully the person who's receiving it like doesn't hate that, and they just I just like now invaded their phone with it, and now
Oh,
it's on their phone.
yeah, nah, man. I think it's well received all around.
Yes.
Now, um, I want to get back to music a little bit because you and I've always appreciated playing with you. One, because of the skill level. There's always kind of there's always a level of kind of quiet intensity. I think you always bring to playing music. I think you're one of the few people that I've played with in a really inviting way. Please don't get me wrong, but I think you're very exact. You know, I think there are things that you want to hear in a certain way, and there are sounds that you want to make happen. And I think a lot of music projects that I've been a part of, both informally and more formally, have been kind of more go with the flow and like definitely wanting to achieve a sound, but just kind of explore spaces a little bit. And playing with you has always been refreshing in a certain way because there were always kind of goals for the way you played and the songs you played, and uh, there was a more technical aspect to a lot of what we played together, and a lot of that was your influence, and sure as heck not mine. Um, Not so much playing with me specifically, but is that a fair assessment of how you approach music as an artist for yourself?
Um, I would say, as far as my playing goes, I try to have like a very calculated approach to how I go about learning like new techniques, or if I want to work on something that I already know, or I want to like it's like so there's this certain kind of picking technique called sweep picking, and basically like you're not like picking individual notes, you're like basically like sliding the pick across all of them in like a certain way so that it's very like smooth and clean.
Mm.
So in order for me to learn that, I found a song that was like just that, and it's really hard and it's really fast, and I can really only still play it maybe like 75% of the actual speed of the way Greg Howe, the guy who wrote it, plays
Yeah,
it.
yeah, of course.
So
I know that name because of you. Yeah.
yeah, so the name of the song is it's called Bach Mach, and it's like a it's like a neoclassical, like super fast, like shreddy piece, but like when I want to learn, like I have like very targeted things. So like if I want to, like I see everything as just like a sort of like a different step. Like I'm stepping like from one stone to the next. And I'm kind of just like grabbing different skills and techniques along the way.
Right.
So in that way, like I see what you're saying to how like I'm used to being like very precise in like how I approach, like, okay, I want this, like I'm going for this sound, and there's only like I'm only seeing like a couple ways or one way to get to that sound, and like that's what I focus on.
Yeah. Oh, tremendous, man. Sweet. I'll have to listen to that song, Bach Mach. I'll look that up.
Yeah,
Right.
it's pretty, it's wild, it's wild.
I can imagine. Now, I kind of bring up Steve and my assessment of being exact and this, that, and the other thing. But what I also love is playing with you. Our song catalog, I don't think we ever really approached a project terribly seriously. I think we always kind of saw in each other like, that's a talented dude that we can play music together, you know?
Sure, sure.
But I don't know if there were ever any goals in terms of playing out or trying to record or do anything like that. It was always in my memory is always like it was a very short list of songs that we played, but it was always kind of a very eclectic and all over the place little sound. And what I used to love about playing with you, and I'd love to get your thoughts about this, maybe playing with me, but I guess just in general, I used to love how we used to have songs where if we were trying to like impress somebody, we would play like Pearl Jam's Black. But then as soon as like somebody left the room, I would be like, "Yo, play it, but like off." You know what I'm saying? And like you would just play it, and it would be like really different, and I would sing on like 1 and 3 instead, and it would just be like this real like almost like circus like sound. And we used to play Little Wig all the time, but we couldn't really play Little Wig very well. You know, I think we used to call it like half-ass Little Wig.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah.
And what I also never forget is we wrote a couple of these, but the one that sticks out is when we were just messing around and we wound up writing like a satire song for Mr. Moran.
Oh yeah, of course.
Of course, he
Yeah.
says.
I mean,
Like,
how
what
can I
else would we do?
that memory is just like, it's just like one of those things you remember, especially like, like a memory that we share. It's just one of those things that always comes up. We always laugh about.
Yeah, man. So we wrote this song about our high school economics teacher and the assistant to our high school psychology. What did she teach? What was that course, Miss Penske?
Um, Government.
Government? Good
Yeah.
Lord. It's bad that I said it was psychology. Good Lord. Uh, but we just wrote this really like, it wasn't even stupid. It was like this real, almost like Weird Al level kind of like,
Yeah, yeah.
it was really some pretty intense stuff. And we wrote this song, and I remember it might have been all your idea, if I'm being honest, but like eventually we said to like Miss Penske and Mr. Moran, like, hey, we wrote you this song. Like, can we play it for the class? and we just played this song. And I remember so vividly. This sounds so dumb, but like people seem to enjoy it. But I just remember, you remember Alex Del Villar?
Yeah.
His face was just like, you know, as we're playing the song. Man, I mean, for my part, I can't stress enough that this was a legitimate song.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was also one of those things where, like, after we wrote it together, it was just like, who the hell does this, you know? And
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I always appreciated kind of playing with you for that reason, because there was always an informality to kind of the way we approached music, but once we had a vision on what we wanted to share, like we took that pretty seriously. And I don't know, man. Playing with you, I can't imagine writing a satirical song with anybody else that I've played with in my life. And I think that's really a special quality in you, man. So I'm very grateful for that indeed.
Thank you.
And I know we used to play quite a bit. Steve and I used to just go play outside, like in the Amps parking lot, and maybe down by the beach a couple times. We played at the high school once. Those were always special times. I have one quick story that I'm wondering if you have any memories of, but I admit, like, it resonates more with me. Do you remember when we saw those rubber bands when we were playing at Andrew Muller?
Rubber bands.
So
what do you mean?
I'll walk you through
details.
It. Yeah, indeed. So I wanted to run it by you first because I have no idea why we were walking around. Here's the thing. We were playing music at Andrew Muller Primary School. And for some reason, we had it in our heads that we had to go somewhere. And instead of like going and driving someplace, we like left and hopped the fence. Like maybe we went to somebody's house real quick. But bottom line, we were walking around and we cut through some woods and we hopped the fence. And we weren't doing anything because God forbid, if we were doing something, I'd probably remember what we were doing. But like we were trying to like get someplace. And then when we were on our way back, and we hopped the fence again from a different spot to like where our car was, or cars were, there was that bunch of rubber bands there on the sidewalk. Do you remember that at all?
Were they like just loose rubber bands?
Just loose rubber bands.
I don't know. I don't recall.
So, for my part, I want to be careful how I say it. When I tell you that I like would believe in spirits or angels or anything, like I can look you in the eye and say that, but it's more that I don't dismiss spirits and angels and kind of things like that. It's not so much that I like subscribe to it. It's just like, what do I know about that being, you know, I'm sure some of these places are haunted. You know what I'm saying? Like it's more just like, it is what it is. The only true, in my opinion, supernatural experience of my life was that day, because my aunt had just died like earlier that week, and we weren't terribly close only because she lived in Florida and they were, you know, she was lovely, but I really only remember visiting her once, and my only memory of her is when I was a little kid, and they had this bag of rubber bands on like this bookshelf, and in that bag of rubber bands there was a blue rubber band, and I was a little kid and I wanted the blue one. And so I remember reaching my hand in trying to get just the blue one, and the whole bag ripped, and all these rubber bands went everywhere. And I remember my mom, she wasn't out of line. I'm not painting that picture, but my mom got upset because I made a mess, you know? And I remember she was like, you know, what happened, this, that, or the other thing. Like not absurd, but like she was upset with me, you know? And what I do remember is my aunt came in and she left and kind of diffused the situation. And to me, that's the only true memory of my aunt, other than just like she called me on my birthday and it was nice to speak to her. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And I don't remember the context of why we were moving around the way we were, but suddenly we had hopped 2 fences and then hopped 2 other fences to get back, and suddenly there were rubber bands on the sidewalk where we were going back to our car. And so I remember I found a blue one, and I wore that blue one until like it ripped off, you know, after like a month. And I remember that was the only time in my life where I was a little shook, like, you know, like that felt kind of really meant to be. So I was wondering if you remembered that at all. Apparently you don't, which is totally fine. But
Yeah, sorry, dude.
no worries, man. But I remember that being one of the truly surreal memories of my life, man. And I haven't experienced anything like that since, to be honest. Um, but anyway, um,
Interesting story.
thanks, man.
Glad I was there.
Hey, man, it wouldn't have happened without you, that's for sure. Uh, Whenever Steve and I would play outside, I think Steve can attest to this. Like, we would go to play music, but I would always kind of like really try to convince Steve, just like, okay, but music is fun, but we're right next to basketball hoops if you want to play for a little bit. And Steve would genuinely not want to play, but I would be just like a child, and Steve would eventually be like, fine, we can play to like 5. And then, like, you know, Steve's so talented at many things, man. He's smarter than me on his worst day. But basketball, he's not really, you know, basketball's not your sport. You know what I'm saying? And so, like,
Definitely.
we would play, and I would beat him real quick, and then be like, okay, we're done, we can go now. But playing basketball, the two of us, wasn't always like that, because there's another game that we like to play that had some loose basketball rules. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the sport of Trevor Ball, man?
So Trevor Ball was started out as basketball, but then we just it just kind of goes back to like the crazy chaotic like smashing thing. Like we like normal basketball with rules like wasn't good enough. So we basically just had no rules and just wound up making the game just get the ball in the hoop no matter what or who you are. And if you're not the person with the ball, you have to get the ball and do anything you can to get it.
Yeah.
And it resulted in a lot of injury and some property damage and, you know, just a lot of foul language, of course,
Yeah.
and a lot of fun, too.
Indeed, man, a lot of fun. You know, it was a trippy game because there aren't a lot of basketball games where I would be like the 5th pick. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, my best assessment is it basically turned into like tackle football with basketball.
Yeah.
But you would only be tackled if you were heading into Joe's bush or Scuba's bush. And probably my favorite memory of playing that game is when Doug Clark went through that wheelbarrow. Do you remember that?
Not I. He went through a wheelbarrow.
Yeah, like a little plastic one. So Scuba had on his lawn this little, like, I think just to like push like seeds along. To be honest, what it reminded me of is what they used to put the chalk on for baseball games. But now I see baseball
Okay.
games.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so the Scuba had one of those on his lawn, and it was made of plastic. And we're playing the game, and people are getting hit, and it's awful, but it's great. And I just remember Doug Clark has the ball, and suddenly he gets walled up by somebody, and he goes flush into this plastic wheelbarrow, like flush. And it's not even like he hits it and bounces off it, like he hits it and he's just resting atop it, and you can tell that like there's like a dent of him in the damn wheelbarrow. I'll never forget that for as long as I live, man. And that was one of the few times where the game actually stopped, and everyone was just like, "Oh my gosh!" I also remember we played that one time on the day of one of the variety shows of the pop jazz thing, and I wound up hurting my wrist. And I went back home, and my dad saw me kind of favoring it. And he's like, "How'd you do that?" And I told him like, "Oh, we were playing Trevor Ball." And I guess I'd never told him what Trevor Ball was. And I told him, what it was, what we were doing, and he got pretty hot with me. And he wasn't even wrong, but he got pretty hot because he's just like, you're playing tackle basketball on the pavement, and you have a show later, and you hurt your wrist. And it was just one of these things like when, and in my mind, I'm just like, well, yeah, but we play it all the time. And just,
Dude, I remember you telling me that your dad was definitely upset about that. And I remember that there was a show, and like the whole thing we were playing, and that was funny.
Yeah, dude. Good memories, man. Now, Steve, one thing that I wanted to make sure to cover has to do with that very same Vermont ski trip. Yeah, I think the same one. Maybe the second one. Ooh, forgive me. One of the Vermont ski trips we took. Steve, this is an expression often thrown around, okay? But when I say this to you, I think I'm being very, very serious. This might have been the hardest I've ever laughed in my life. And what I'm referring to is when you and I had the opportunity to meet the Flowbots.
Oh, yes. I have to admit, this kind of caught me off guard. I hadn't really, I was like, I went into this kind of knowing like some of the stuff we would talk about, like the band and whatnot, but for some reason, like the Flowbots, it's just like, yeah, definitely. Like, how could I not think of that?
Steve, with this in mind, as much as that took you off guard, would you be kind enough to kind of talk me through your perspective of going to see them that evening?
Yeah, so, we all went up and we had like this little like ski condo, and we were all hanging out there for a couple of days. And one of the nights that we were there at the ski mountain, they had like a rock show going on.
Yeah.
Just a couple groups, and then so one of them was the Flowbots, and of course I was, I had liked them, and I know that you had liked them, and they were kind of popular at the time, so they were being talked about or something.
Yeah.
And so we were interested, so we went, and then it was like really, really cold, and the show was all right, but it was still kind of cold. But then we heard that they were seen like kind of walking around and like on the mountain and stuff. So we were like, we got to go check it out.
Yeah.
And so we walked up one side of the mountain, like up along the ski thing where you could kind of walk, and the snow was like super deep. And I was either wearing like just my sneakers and like stepping into like feet of snow like over and over again. But I was just like in really bad shape, just like at that time. Like I was trying to take pictures with my camera, right, and I had like dropped the camera in the snow and like didn't realize it, and I had to turn around and go back down the mountain and find it. So I was just a wreck, and nothing was making sense. So we're on that side of the mountain, and then we see somebody else who was talking about the Flowbots being on the other side of the mountain. So we're like, all right, well, if they're there, we have to go find them. So we go down, and then we make our way to the bottom. We go back up the other side, and it's the same situation. There's just snow, and it's slippery, and there's ice, and I'm just wearing like slick bottom Vans sneakers, and it was just so bad. And then we finally were like, holy shit, there they are.
Yeah.
And so we go up to them. We're like, hey, we just saw the show. Like, you guys are cool. It was fun. And of course, so we had the camera. We wanted to take some pictures. And we had asked a person that was standing by if they could take a picture for us. So they happily obliged. So we went and we stood with them. And they're like, okay, get ready. And I'm like trying to get my footing. And then all of a sudden I just totally wipe out, like just out of nowhere. And I hit the ground really hard. I landed on my back. And, like with the way it worked was, I think we all kind of like were doing like the shot where we were like all, like doing this.
Yeah.
So like on my way down, I kind of like dragged one of them with me a little bit. So he was kind of like, what the fuck? And so like they're like, everyone's looking over, and I don't think you realized at first. I think you
I did not.
yeah, you were like, I had fallen, and then the guy next to me like definitely knew I fell, and then you were kind of just still waiting for the picture to be taken, and then you look over and I'm just like on the ground like slipping trying to get up, like just so like pathetic.
just being helped up by the semi-famous rock band. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, especially at the time. I mean, now you can laugh a little bit because, with all due respect, but like at that time they were, like we were jacked up about seeing the show.
Yeah.
So my perspective of that, the Flowbouts were there because it was the X Games, and
right,
yes. What in hindsight, what's kind of a shame is like I met a bunch of those snowboarders, and for all I know, a couple of them are like, gold medalists at this point, but at the time it just didn't resonate with me. It was just like, oh, hey man, how are you? Shake your hand and just like, good luck. And they're just like, thanks, man. All super nice dudes. We see the Flowbots. They play our very good show, but again, it's not, they're there as the background. They're there because it's the X Games. Steve and I are the minority where like, we're there for the music. Everyone else is there because they're the best snowboarders in the world. And so we see the show and it's all right. And we see the Flowbouts on the other end of the mountain. And we're like, okay, Steve and I, we got to go see them. And Steve doesn't do so bad making his way down the mountain. But when he has to start working like up the mountain to go see the Flowbouts, the poor guy just looks like he's on skates, and his legs are all over the place. And it's to the point where like I have to start like moving quicker because I'm just like being a terrible friend and just like, like not even laughing with you. You know what I'm saying? Like really, it's really not good. Like I'm just cut up. And what I will remember for as long as I live, because it's actually one of the better lines I've ever had, is like you were like, Holly, man, I don't think I can do this. And I said, like, well, what are you going to do, man? You're going to walk back up that way to where our friends are? You might as well go visit them. And that convinced me to keep going, which is the most clutch thing I've ever said. We get up to the Flowbots, and it's a struggle for Steve to get there with a capital S, man. Like, and I'm being totally insensitive about it. Like, I'm pretty sure that I am as red as Santa's suit because I've just been laughing for an extended amount of time, and there's probably some altitude at play at this point too. And we get up to where the Flowbots are, and we say, hello, great show, and they're really kind. And I take Steve's camera, and Steve doesn't want to move justifiably, so I take his camera, and I'm flagging somebody down, just a stranger to take the photo. And I remember this girl takes the camera rather, and like she starts to like point it. And then like I see like her just like stop pointing it. Like she just literally goes like, and then she just goes like that, And I'm in my head, I'm just like, why did she like stop doing that? And that's when I look over and I see Steve being helped up by this group, and Steve's legs are just like, and oh dude, and I love. See, that's one of the few photos I have, but I know you do too. But like, I have that saved more than probably you do, man. And that is one of the most treasured memories of my life. And dude, I'll never forget it for as long as I live.
Me neither, man. It's like the Moran. It's like the Mr. Moran song. It's just like one of these memories that's just, we'll remember it in like 20 more years.
Yeah. Oh, indeed, man. And thanks to you, we'll have the photo evidence to prove it.
Yes, yes.
Steve, do you want to make sure to cover anything else tonight, man?
Nothing. I mean, nothing in particular. Let me think. I thought it was an interesting point that you made, though, because like about the whole like documentation and like the pictures and everything, and I never really thought like how, or like when you were describing it, it kind of made me reflect on how, even going back to before, like when it became more, or when it became easier to take pictures and document your own, travelings and activities with the people that you hang out with, how I was kind of still doing that, even just if it was a little bit before that happened. I never really considered how that, I guess that was true, and how that kind of just still carries on now to when it's easy to do that. I'm doing it more, and I have, just a bunch more stuff saved.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. It's part of you, man. It's a special part indeed. I remember one of those nights, you took a photo on my deck. You hopped from the top level to the bottom, which in and of itself is not that unique. But I remember when you did do, like, you hurled yourself off the top, top, when you put your weight on it, it cracked. And mercifully, the deck held no structural damage. But I remember that being a very tense moment.
Oh, wait, you mean this?
Yes, look at that. Dude, there it is. You couldn't script that if you tried. Look at that. Well done, dude. There's your slideshow. Excellent.
Oh, wait, look.
Oh, look at me. Baby boy. Thank God that's out of focus, bro, because that cannot be a flattering shot at this point.
Dude, I think that's the Suffolk County basketball shirt.
I think it is, man. It's I had plenty, and they were all fitting me like a flag, dude. That I think they were all like double XL, man. I was not a big believer in wearing shirts that fit back then.
Yeah, we got an old classic group shot.
Oh man, that's the one. I have that one saved myself. Look at that. You even got you got John, of course, which is lovely. And then you got Mikey Callahan looking about 3 years old.
Yeah, Mike Mioli back there, too.
Look at that. What a shot, man.
Yeah, dude.
That's the crew, man. Crash, trash, math, indeed. Oh, dude.
What do you got over there? What are you drinking?
This is actually a coffee stout from Sierra Nevada. And I'm not typically much of a stout guy, but kind of this one is scratching the itch a little bit. I think the coffee's kind of doing it for me a little bit.
Nice.
I think it's straight up called coffee stout. It's good stuff. Yeah, man.
Sweet.
Well, Steve, man, I want to thank you so much for coming on, man. I had a blast reflecting on some memories with you. Thank you so much for, chronicling those memories before it was hip to chronicle those memories, and playing some music with me, and always a good time. Oh, wait, hang on real quick. Do you remember the first time we met was at Sports Plus, and I accidentally hit you in the face on that bike ride? Do you remember that?
Bike ride? With the screen, like the motorbike ride?
Yeah.
No, I don't remember getting hit, though, but that was the first time we hung out. It was at Sports Plus.
And I remember being kind of mortified because at that point, like, there was a time where I was only friends with like Zach, and then it was just like, oh, okay, like, yeah, and then, oh, you guys hang out with Mike Mioli too, like, yeah, I hang out with Mike, and then I remember we spent an all day hanging out, and and then we were doing like this virtual like thing, and I just literally do one of these, and I just like hit Steve right in the face, and just like and I'm just like, all right, stinger. First impressions, man, all about it. Dude, that's not much of a story, but that is definitely always going to be the way we met with that. Dude.
Good shit.
Well, thank you so much for everything, man. Thank you for being on the Corn Chronicles. The search continues. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Absolutely, dude. This was awesome. If you ever want to do this again, let me know.
Yeah, man.
I'll find some more old pictures. We'll talk about some more old crazy stories.
Yeah, man. Sounds good, man. I can't wait. Thank you so much. This was Steve Soroka, ladies and gentlemen, Ears of Corn. Make sure you have a pleasant evening and an even better tomorrow, all right?
You as well, man. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.